Another variation of the DHCP attack is going to be that if you think about it, poor security can be used to limit the number of MAC addresses seen on the interface. We've seen that before. So you may say that, okay, what I'm gonna do to defend against this attack, I'm gonna go on my switch where my clients are connected and configure poor security so that the attacker is gonna be able to send packets, spoofed DHCP requests in the network with a single MAC address or two MAC addresses, depending on how many MAC addresses do I allow on the port with the poor security feature. So the attacker is no longer going to be able to send spoofed DHCP requests with spoofed source MAC addresses. But what happens is that most DHCP implementations per the RFC, they're not going to listen IP address to a client based on the MAC address of the client, but based on it's called the DHCP client identifier. So in this use case, it means that the attacker, what it can do, it can keep the same source MAC address in the Ethernet frame, but change the DHCP client identifier across DHCP packets. So the attacker is going to be able to send, again, lots of DHCP requests out in the network. Is going to keep the same source MAC address in the Ethernet header, but then at the DHCP payload level is going to change the DHCP client identifier across packets. So this means that poor security is going to see a single source MAC address, so it's not going to be able to stop starvation of the DHCP pool on the server. So how can we defend against this kind of attack? Is going to be by using DHCP snooping, which is going to be a feature performed and configured by a layer 2 switch. So in order for the switch to do this kind of inspection and mitigate this attack, it doesn't even need an IP address to begin with. So what's going to happen is that the switch is going to listen and intercept all of the DHCP traffic between client and server. So all DHCP traffic sent back and forth to the switch is going to be intercepted by the switch in the end. And once you can enable the feature, the switch is going to deny all inbound traffic on all ports in the VLAN where snooping was enabled by default. So like if you're going to enable DHCP snooping on the switch in VLAN 10, as soon as you enable it, it means that the switch at that point is going to drop all inbound DHCP server type messages on any ports in that VLAN. So at that point, nobody's going to be able to get any addresses from the DHCP servers, because all replies from the servers are going to be dropped by the switch. So you're going to defend yourself in this use case against an attacker plugging in the network a rogue DHCP server. So what needs to happen is that you have to go and configure on the switch the ports connected to the DHCP server as DHCP trusted. Because on the DHCP snooping trusted ports, the switch no longer inspects DHCP traffic and allows unconditionally inbound DHCP traffic, both from both DHCP server traffic and both DHCP client traffic. And as the switch is going to intercept the DHCP messages back and forth between the client and the server, is going to build an IP to MAC mapping on a per interface basis in something which is called the DHCP snooping table. And now this is going to defend against a rogue DHCP server. And now how can you defend against a rogue DHCP client which can deplete the pool on the DHCP server? Is by the fact that as soon as on a client on a port of the switch in the VLAN where snooping is enabled is going to get an IP address from the DHCP server, then all further inbound DHCP requests on that port are going to be dropped by the switch. And that makes sense. Like for example, if a client connected on port 101 has actually received an IP address from the DHCP server, and the switch has seen that because it constantly intercepts all DHCP packets, then the switch says, okay, if you got an IP address, then why do you send any more new DHCP requests? It doesn't make sense. So this feature you're going to defend against both the DHCP rogue server and against the DHCP rogue client. If the switch, however, doesn't support snooping, which if it's a Cisco switch, it is going to support snooping. If it runs iOS, of course, the small business switches don't support snooping in most cases. But either way, a variation, another option to defend against this kind of attack is that as long as you know that the DHCP requests are being sent on UDP port 67 and the replies are being sent on UDP port 68, then what you can go and manually filter DHCP replies from all sources except DHCP server. So what you're gonna do is you're gonna go on your switch, and for example, if you know that the DHCP server is connected on port 105, then you're going to configure a filtering on the switch in that VLAN so that only port 105 is allowed to send inbound DHCP servers messages in that VLAN. So the way you can achieve this is by using port access list, VLAN access list, but of course VLAN ACLs are going to be more efficient than port access list. We're going to speak about those. We're going to see examples of PACLs and VACLs when we get to firewalls. I'm going to do that example at that point. But a PACL and a VACL is nothing else but a layer 3 IP filter configured on a layer 2 port. It's called a PACL, and or at the VLAN level, which is called a VACL. The VACL is more efficient than the PACL because it doesn't make sense to apply the same filtering on all ports in the same VLAN. It's rather better to apply the filtering globally at the VLAN level. That's why it's going to be more efficient. But as I was saying, most Cisco switches, all Cisco switches that run iOS, if you run the proper feature set, the proper license, to let's say it that way, then it's gonna support DHCP snooping.